I'd like to demonstrate two things for you here using Google Sheets. Several things. I'd like to show you how to download a copy so that you can work on your own. I'd also like to show you how to enter and run some basic calculations, and then how to create a chart out of some data. And we're actually going to create a chart with two y-axes. So let's get started. In order to make this so that I can use it, I follow the link that is available in Canvas. And I have view only. That's because I'm in my personal account here. And so in order to get a copy, I need to go to File, Make Copy. And what folder do I want to put this in? I don't know. We'll put it wherever. And now that it's opened up a copy, this is a separate tab, and I've got editing access to this. So the next thing that I want to do is I want to figure out the annual temperature range. Now, in the lab exercise, I did explain that this value, the range, is the difference between the high and the low. But there are ways that we can run this calculation inside of either Excel or Google Sheets. Google Sheets has most of the functionality that the common user needs, and it continues to evolve. But let's enter an equation in this little box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click right there until I start to have an equation. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say basically that this cell or this box is equal to, and it's once I put in that equal, it's ready for an equation, and we'll see that right up there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say this box here is equal to whatever's in this box minus whatever's in this box. And notice how it just says E2 and D2. It's all color-coded. Everything is nice. I hit the Enter key, and I get 7.7. So now that equation is in there, instead of being 58.4 minus 50.7, it's just E2 minus D2. Now, one of the very coolest things about Excel and about Google Sheets is that you can take this equation, because it is in row 2, and it's column E and column F, column E and column F, and it's using the data from E, D, and E. I can basically take this equation, drag it down, and it will record for everything else. So I'm just going to drag once, and then we'll show what that does. I drag it once, and now when I click on to that particular box, or that particular cell is what it's called, it's E3 and D3. So it took E3 minus D3. What? Can I do that everywhere? Yeah. So I'm just going to click, drag my way all the way down to the bottom. And there we go. So all the way up and down, it's taken that same equation. We're in row 15. This is going to be the value of E15 minus D15. And that gives me that value. Now, what do we know from that? As we look at these numbers, we'll notice that they seem, for the most part, are increasing as we get further away from the ocean. Okay, now what we want to do, so that is a very simple way to either enter an equation into a cell, that's what we call these little boxes, and then to take that same equation and drag it across a number of different boxes, a number of different cells. The next thing I want to do is I want to create a chart. Now, the data that I'm going to want to include in the chart is going to be most of this stuff. Okay? We're going to go in and make some modifications as we get there. But the very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of the cells. Okay? That's what we call little boxes, the cells, in Google Sheets. And then I'm going to say insert a chart. Right? Now, it starts to think that it knows exactly what I'm after. Right? And so it gives me this stacked column. For this particular exercise, this is not what we want. Okay, what we want is we want to change this, instead of to the suggested, we'd like to go to the line. So I'm going to go to the line value there. Now, it still looks nothing like what we're wanting it to. Okay, and so what we can do is just come in here, change around things, just clicking on them, but there's a few other modifications that we need to make first. The first thing that I want to remove is one of these series. Okay, notice how we have 1, 2, 3, 4 series. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 series of data. Excuse me, and I don't need that many. So what I'm going to do, I just want elevation, temperature, and temperature on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the little sandwich here, little shish kebab and remove this particular series. Now I'm still in setup, so I've changed my chart type. I go down to series and I remove that transect. Okay, now everything is great, right? It's showing me all of my locations. It's showing me the elevation, and it's showing me the average January temperature and the average July temperature. Okay, now, it's not necessarily giving me the names that I want. I think it has to do with what's on the first line. Okay, so maybe we'll need to go in a little bit later, but the main thing that we want to do is change this guy around. See, the problem is that here it's using all of the y-axis. Okay, and so 0 to nearly 8,000 does do a nice job at giving elevation, but when we're taking these temperatures on a range from 0 to 8,000, it does not present it in a very clean way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and customize these guys. And I want to go into the series. And I don't want to apply whatever I'm doing. I don't want to apply to all series. I want to take care of each one individually. The first one I'm going to grab is that elevation. And instead of using the left axis, I'm going to say, hey, you know what? Use the right axis. Notice what that does now is it puts elevation range over on the right side. And now I've got this beautiful temperature range over on the left. For the colors, I would like that line to be in black. Then for my January temperature, I would like that line to be in blue. But everything else is good, right? And then for my July temperature, I would like that value to be in red. And up here, I might just do something like double-clicking and saying that this is going to be elevation and temp chart. For these individual guys, I can double-click into them and start to change around some of the names. This is going to be my January temp. This guy right here is going to be my July temp, and that's going to be elevation. Perfect. Okay, now this chart is here. It's done. It's wonderful. So what do I do with it now? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to come over here and we're going to say copy this chart. Okay. Then what we can do is we can come over here into, I'm going to come over and just create a new Word doc or a new Google Doc. Sure, we'll create and share. This is just going to be for scrap purposes, but what we've done is we've taken this chart that we created with the little sandwich up there in the corner. We copy that chart, and then let's say that this is your answer sheet. You can take this guy and just right-click and paste, or go edit, paste, and there's that chart. Okay. Now, one thing that it didn't do is it didn't space these guys out. It's just spaced each one of them evenly. For most of what you're needing to do in this lab, that ought to work. Although it would be nice if it were a little bit neater. Now, as you're going through and answering the questions, I recommend that you go ahead and use this chart, because what you're able to do is just hold your mouse over each one of those individual points. It tells you the location, Colfax, and the elevation. Okay. Same thing up here as well. For example, you'll notice that it's a little bit warmer in January at this particular location. So I hold my mouse over there and it goes, oh, January, the temperature's up to there. Whereas in Sacramento, whereas in Davis, it's that temperature. And in Rockland, it's that temperature. Okay, you're coming down and you should expect it to get cold or warmer, and you come over here and you go, oh, Donner Lake is going to be at that temperature. So it's really nice using it in here to be able to answer those questions. Those guys do not show up in this graph when you have copied and pasted it over. It more pastes it like an image. That is how we are able to download and make a copy of our own spreadsheet in Google Sheets. Then we're able to enter an equation. And then we're able to grabbing and dragging that little, once you're on that little crosshairs on the big block in the corner, click and drag that equation all the way down, and then the instructions on making the chart that's necessary for this particular exercise.